Speaking of that, speaking of bombs that were based on beloved properties from the '60s,
Yeah, yes.
The Man from Uncle.
Man from Uncle. Yeah.
Totally intentional, folks. There's a reason I'm taking there's a reason I'm taking a week off from work
Yeah.
because clearly I've been burning it at both ends a bit too much.
Yeah, that's all right.
So, The Man from Uncle, our new movie of the week, which usually for new movies we go within like the last 2 years, but
We went
I've been
9.
curious about this one for a bit.
I have been too, yeah. Because my mom and dad watched the TV show when it was on back in the '60s. Um,
Yeah,
it's
I've heard people tell me that at some key points of the '60s, it was bigger than Bond in America.
it wouldn't surprise that doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
Although I guess a
Um,
TV show that shows regularly is hard to compare to a movie franchise, even one that spammed out movies as quickly as Bond did.
yeah. Of course, it was the 1960s, and Cold War espionage
Hmm.
stories were all the rage. I mean, you had the Man from Uncle, you had Mission Impossible, you had or James Bond.
Hmm.
That the one with Bill Cosby. Um,
Spies Like Us.
no, not Spies Like Us. I Spy.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah. So the Man from Uncle was in there. The uh, the actor who played Ilya Kuryakin in the TV show, David McCallum. Modern audiences will know him as the eccentric medical examiner Ducky from NCIS.
Oh, okay. I don't know him from that, but that
Oh,
sounds
yeah,
familiar.
yeah. Well, NCIS. I mean, that show's been on for like 25 years or something like that. He
Yeah.
sadly, I think he passed away last year, or the year before. He was in his 90s, so he lived a
Yep.
long life.
Had a good run.
Mm.
Um, well, speaking of people who didn't have a good run, let's talk about this unfortunate movie.
Yeah,
This thing came out and first off, they dropped it in August and it bombed.
yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
And I remember people who I knew and who I followed on YouTube who watched at the time being kind of startled that what they saw as such a good movie was like so ignored.
Yeah. Well, I can't. I don't know what came out right around the same time as this one. But
Where did this come out in relation to Lone Ranger?
uh,
Arnie Hammer's other great
oh,
flop.
great flop. I want to say it came out after Lone Ranger.
Um,
Lone Ranger, I
uh,
want to say was like 2013, 2014.
okay, so this Man from Uncle would have come out like 2013, so 2 years later.
Yeah.
So man, Arnie Hammer just could not catch a break.
No. And yeah, well, he's got other issues, beyond that.
Yeah, there might have been some I as well type accusations that apparently were not actually seen as having enough evidence to prosecute.
Yeah, yeah. And hey, Ninja, good to see you.
And
Yeah,
Ninja.
yeah.
Well,
But the other thing too with this movie is it was directed by Guy Ritchie, who who's I will say his movies really don't usually do well at the box office. He does. There's some exceptions, like well, he directed the live action Aladdin, which I don't know if that counts.
like that's basically stunt casting to put him in there as the director there.
Yeah,
Um,
but I was curious about this movie because he had also directed the two Sherlock Holmes movies with
right.
Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law, and I thought and my thought was that, well, he was going to do for the Man from Uncle what he did for Sherlock Holmes.
Mhm.
You know,
He, in fact, did not.
no, well, I,
Okay. I,
I,
should,
I,
I, should, I should say, from the perspective, I'm not talking about a quality thing. I'm saying from like a audience reaction perspective.
true, yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I think it's just because I mean he has a very, of course, he's very much an indie director, and that might kind of play into why some people just don't quite understand like his movies. He does have a very unique visual style that can put
Mhm.
a lot of people off.
Yeah, like would it be fair to say that this movie in particular is kind of aloof?
It is, yeah. But you could say that about almost all of his movies. And Ninja points out that he directed the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which was also with Henry Cavill.
And was a bomb. Uh,
Yeah.
we were talking before the show, and like with the whole Warhammer thing seemingly melting down if they can't agree on a script soon. It's like, did Henry Cavill at some point in his 20s like I don't know, walk under a ladder at an Indian burial ground or something?
Yeah.
Because the dude is just cursed when it comes to his projects. It
Yeah,
really
yeah,
seems.
did have too many black cats cross his path. I mean,
Yeah,
yes. uh, but yeah. So I guess we should get into the plot of the movie.
yeah,
The movie is basically an origin story for the organization known as Uncle, which is this like counterintelligence spy, organization, similar to the Impossible Mission Force from Mission Impossible. Um,
right. What's unique about this one is that it's kind of a joint U.S. Soviet um, effort
right. Yeah.
because it's basically like designed to deal with threats that they both don't want to deal or don't want to come to fruition.
Right. And in the case of this movie, bad guys from WW2 getting their hands on a nuke.
And not just the German ones, the Italian ones too, which
Yeah.
is an
Yeah.
interesting twist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what really struck me with this one was just like it's kind of easy to forget that in the 1960s it feels like a different era. But if you were living in Germany or Italy, there were there were people all around you who you knew well who had done awful things, even if you didn't know about them.
Yeah, especially in Italy, they had a really hard time getting through their post-war troubles, and of course Germany, was divided in two with West and East. So you had
Yeah,
that whole thing going for it.
which is actually where our movie begins in East Berlin.
Yes, so we meet Napoleon Solo, who's played by Henry Cavill. He goes into East Germany because he's got to recruit this young woman. I should have pulled up the
Gabby,
IMDb page. Gabby, who's played by Alicia
Alicia Vikander.
Alicia Vikander. Yeah, and if for those of you who probably recognize her name, she played Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider reboot a few years back.
Which, you know what, I've had that on my shelf as a Blu-ray for like gotta be close to 8 years at this point that I picked up on some Black Friday randomly. I need to actually watch it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, so Napoleon is in he's getting recruiting Gabby because her father is a nuclear scientist, and he's gone missing and they need her help to find him. And but hot on his trail is a KGB agent named Ilya Kuryakin, who's played by Army Hammer. And I find it really funny that you have a British actor playing an American CIA agent, and you have an American actor playing a Russian KGB agent.
And a Swede playing a is her character supposed to be Italian?
German, I think.
Okay, that's a little less of a stretch.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, wait, is his name Army Hammer with an M? I've been saying it Arnie Hammer this whole time. I feel like a jerk.
Bart's teacher's name is Krabappel. I've been calling her Crandall. I've been making an idiot of myself.
But so to kind of go into the characters themselves a bit, so Cavill's character Solo is he's not a good dude. He basically got out of the war and he was caught fencing stolen art pieces and other contraband. And they basically said, "Look, you're very good at this job. You can either do it for us or you can go to prison."
Yes. And if that sounds familiar, it should. Sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to plug my own stuff.
Oh, yes.
Jessica.
Right. I didn't make the connection because he doesn't quite have the same shape as her.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
I will say Alicia Vikander would have made a good Jessica 10 years before, but
Yeah.
probably I don't know what she looks like these days.
Yeah, I don't either. Um,
But anyway, he is very much so. The way I ended up watching this movie, I think, may have slightly impacted how I absorbed it. But I basically had so I watched our other movie that's going to be at the end of the show on Sunday. Then I kind of plowed through the first 10 minutes of this, then resumed the next day. I
uh,
might have lost some of the momentum from Solo because he's like a suave, cool guy. He's basically American James Bond when you get down,
yeah, yeah,
especially appropriate since Cavill was in the running to be the last James Bond instead of Daniel Craig.
yes. But the producers decided he was too young at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but and he basically is very. What I'll say is that he kind of comes off. How to put it? How to put it? The best James Bonds, in my opinion, come off as like good natured,
Mhm.
which is why I don't really rank Daniel Craig as one of the best James Bonds. But that's neither here nor there.
So you're more like Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Roger Moore's the one I've watched the most of recently, and I'd even say that what's his name, the first one,
Connery.
Connery. Thank you. I'd say that Connery even had a lot of good humor to him.
Yeah.
Like the difference is that like those James Bonds will quip a bon mot, and it's like you get the sense that they're in on the gag and that they're just happy to be there and they're enjoying life.
Yeah.
Where Cavill's Solo feels like he's just there to cut people down and prove he's superior.
Yeah, you do get that. I did get that impression from that. Yeah.
It's like I just found him to be very unlikable, unfortunately. Um,
Yeah.
eh, which makes it funny that I can't think of the last American versus Soviet spy thing I saw where I ended up liking the Soviet character more because it's like they kept wanting to crap on Ilya the whole movie, and as a result, it's just like, what are you talking about? Ilya's good at his job. He's,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's trying.
Yeah. Like I kind of the way I kind of see them is Solo is more the like the James Bond type, the more suave, debonair, well dressed and well groomed and everything.
Mhm.
And then Ilya is more rough and tumble.
Yes,
Yeah.
and but like they keep doing things to embarrass Ilya. Like
Yeah.
Solo gets away uh, early on and he gets punished. But part of the reason that Solo gets away is that a bunch of German police or East German police officers show up and demand to see his papers at an inconvenient moment.
Yeah.
Or like when they're in Italy together, he's pretending to be a architect, and so Solo's saying, "Hey, there are going to be some guys who come up and
Yeah.
try to frisk you. They're actually there to make sure that you're an architect. Well, a traveling German architect wouldn't be able to fight off a bunch of Italian thugs. So you're gonna have to let them steal your money,
Yeah.
basically. Like, and you could tell that Solo was getting off on the humiliation he was about to put Ilya through.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, there another part when when they're working her with Alicia Vikander, they're working like she has like a transponder that's on a garter under her dress, and like
Mhm.
okay, well, make sure it's to make sure it's turned on, and then there's a little tension between the two of them, and Solo comes in. All right, everybody, turn on.
Yeah, and like I could see a lot of people enjoying this chemistry between the two of them, where they're just like this rivalry between the two of them.
Yeah,
It just turned me off because it never felt like Ilya ever got his in a real sense.
yeah.
like in the last fight, he sort of he saved the day in the last fight, so that's probably the closest he got to it. But it felt like Solo was always one step ahead of him. When I wondered at certain points if it would have made the movie better if they had like been more split up.
Yeah, yeah. I remember you talking about that when you were watching it. It's like there was almost like this weird rule that they always had to be together at all times.
Right, which they were separated at some points, but it was
Mhm.
like they were chained together at points. Like they basically, yeah. We'll get into the ending in a minute.
Yeah.
So, so the overall plot here is that Gabby's father has devised a new method of uranium enrichment that basically lets you make weapons grade fissile material in a fraction of the time,
Yeah.
which means that suddenly nuclear weapons go from being the domain of the USSR and the USA to suddenly any Joe Schmo with the ability to buy a little bit of uranium could make some.
Yes, which is definitely not good. Uh,
And I will say, for 1960s Cold War tension, like height of tension times,
yeah.
that is about the only thing that could realistically make the USA and the USSR form a joint operation like Uncle. So you know what? That actually makes it plausible. Good job.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So as they're investigating, they're posing as, obviously they're undercover, and the main baddie is, let's see, her name was Victoria, played by Elizabeth Debicki. I think that's how you pronounce her name, Debicki.
Debicki. Yeah.
Debicki. She was in she was in something that I did a solo review on. It was called the Night Manager.
Oh, she was also the Golden Lady in Guardians of the Galaxy too.
Yes, and she played Princess Diana in the last two seasons of The Crown. So
Hmm. Okay. She's apparently Polish and Irish.
she's also very tall. I think she's
Yeah.
like 6'2" or 6'3". Yeah, she was standing over Henry Cavill.
And he is not a small man.
No, he's not. Um,
But so I would say we don't necessarily need to go through like all the blow by blows.
yeah.
It's basically they're unraveling the mystery as they go. Um,
Mhm.
some of the uh, one of the more interesting scenes was at one point there's like a boat chase where they're escaping from this facility where they found some more clues.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like where my like okay, so you either think that this is an amazing, hilarious moment as Solo, uh, you know, as Solo kind of wins one over on Ilya, or you're like me and you go, "You jerk," because
Yeah.
because okay, so okay, so what I will say in Solo's defense, they're in a speedboat zipping away,
Yeah.
and he falls out of the speedboat when they hit a wave, and Ilya doesn't notice, and he's still talking to him like he's there.
Yeah.
So Solo proceeds to swim up, gets onto a dock, gets into a truck that's there, and finds the truck driver's lunch, including a
Yeah.
bottle of wine, and proceeds to enjoy himself. And this was a very striking scene because
Yeah.
uh, you have it's completely silent because he's turned on the radio and is listening to it, and you see this elaborate boat chase happening from kind of Solo's POV, and it's
Yeah.
totally silent as it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that kind of fits in with Guy Ritchie's style, is that like you're just the sound is not where you're expecting it to be. It's kind of like in the first the Sherlock Holmes movie, the when the explosion at the wharf. You don't hear the explosions going off. You just hear the music in the background, and you're watching Sherlock Holmes trying to run away from the explosion. And I think that's obviously a creative choice on his part,
Mhm.
which you're either gonna like that or you're gonna hate it.
Yeah, and I'm kind of two minds about it because on the one hand, I still remember it days later, where like a lot of movies where there's an elaborate boat chase scene, I completely forget it.
Yeah.
Like like say I don't remember the boat chase from Indiana Jones 3 especially well, the one in Italy.
Oh
I,
yeah.
I more remember the catacombs underneath with like all the skeletons and rats and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Um, so like a boat chase itself has to work hard to be especially memorable. But it also like at the time I felt like I was being, how to put it, and this is where it's like I think that this is like my fundamental disconnect with Guy Ritchie's approach in this movie. It's like, oh, what's that? You thought you were getting a boat chase? Nah,
Yeah.
that's boring. Why would you want that? Let me subvert your expectations, to borrow an overly loaded phrase.
Yeah. Or yeah, or another part where they're raiding raiding the facility, and they're showing this like big, they're all storming in, and they're doing this whole like kind of like special ops kind of thing, but but it's sped up. You don't see the whole thing going through it. It's just like, okay, well, I want to watch that. Like, no, you
Yeah,
don't get to watch that.
no, shut up. you,
Yeah.
you you don't get it or deserve it.
Mm.
But and what I'll say is that the last act, I feel like it kind of trips on its face because this isn't my favorite movie by a long shot, but I think the first two acts were pretty on point. Aside from my issues with how the two lead protagonists were being portrayed,
Yeah.
the ending kind of ends on a wet fart. It almost feels like.
Yeah, I will say that is the weakest part of the movie. Yeah, it just it was very it's very anticlimactic. Yeah, it's just like,
Right.
oh, that's how okay, that's how you're ending it. All right.
And I think it's kind of like the thing where the two characters kind of had to be together. Like, we said, like, it's like the weird contractual thing where they have to be with each other at the same time.
Yeah.
Because it's like they first both go to save Alicia's character who's been kidnapped.
Yeah.
Um, and then afterwards, basically Solo gets a solo speech with the bad guy and uses their own weapon to do something. That's
Yes.
as that is as specific as I will get. And what I found myself thinking was, well, Ilya was the one with the relationship with Gabby. What if you had a situation where it's like Solo goes, "Okay, you get the girl, I'll get the bomb,"
Yeah.
and then like intercut between the two scenes? That might have improved things a bit.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Um but again, yeah, there was this weird thing where like they always had to be together at all times. Just yeah.
Yeah. Um, so overall, I would say that I have watched Snatch before and enjoyed myself,
Hmm.
and I think part of why I enjoyed Snatch was that like it was more of a, I would say Snatch is more outright comedic.
Yeah.
You want a dag?
Yeah.
You never buy a dag from a gypsy. But just things like that. Right, this was taking itself more seriously,
Mm.
and I will say it has a very unique visual style. Like it's never what you would expect. I think in another life, Guy Ritchie would have been, in addition to being like a movie director, he could have been an amazing comic book artist.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Because
he definitely has the eye for that. Yeah.
like just some of like imagining some of these shots as panels would have been really avant garde and impressive.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
So like if the idea of a kind of avant garde um, action spy thriller sounds good to you, then I say give it a watch.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix right now.
Yes. Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I think I enjoyed it for the most part. Yeah, except for the ending. But I actually think that, yeah, like I kind of wish that like Solo and Ilya had actually like near the end, like a little sooner gotten to be like better friends than they did.
Yeah. Yeah, like everyone's very disconnected from each other. Like as much as Alicia and Ilya kind of have chemistry, it also comes off as very like detached.
Yeah.
even though they do in fact make love. Well, no, making love would imply there was love to make. They have sterile, or they have intense intercourse at one point.
Yes.
I kept trying to come up with a word that wouldn't imply feelings.
Yeah. And Ninja says he'll probably give this a watch at some point based on Ungentlemanly Warfare. I kind of want to watch Ungentlemanly Warfare at some point too.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to compare to this one, considering it's another Guy Ritchie movie about spies in a period piece with Henry Cavill along.
Yeah, yeah. Only they got Jack Reacher in that one instead of Army Hammer.
Uh, Well, also, Mr. Hammer, if by some chance your publicist shows you this review, you deserved better in this movie. And I'm sorry, I thought your name was Arnie Hammer for 10 years.
Yeah, yes. Apologies.
Yes, man.